So, without further ado, I'm just going to do a quick introduction of our guest this evening. And I'm going to read it because it's so long. Ron Tite is an award-winning writer and creative director, speaker, author, and CEO. He has worked with such clients as Air France, Evian, Microsoft, Hershey's, Johnson & Johnson, and Volvo, among many others. He is the founder of Church and State, a content marketing agency. He was the executive producer and host of the award-winning CBC show Monkey Toast, as well as writing a number of television series. He's penned a children's book. He also has written, performed, and produced the theatrical play, The Canadian Baby Bonus. And as a speaker, he is in high demand, performing lectures on content marketing, branding, and innovation. He is the author of Everyone is an Artist, or at least should be, published by HarperCollins in 2016. He also wrote the book I'm holding here, his latest, I think, to say. In his spare time, Ron does nothing. He's too tired to do that. So, without further ado, Ron Tite, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Look at this. Is this set not impressive? This is incredible.
So just so everybody knows how tonight is going to work, we're going to have a conversation for 40, 45 minutes or so. I'm going to ask Ron some questions, pick his brain about this new book, which is pretty exciting. And then afterwards, we'll do a little Q&A if you guys are interested. So if you have questions, please ask them. This guy's a wealth of knowledge. And if you don't, I have a few questions I'll ask him, so I'd like to learn too.
Backups.
But yeah, so hopefully we learned something today. So I wanted to start by saying, I grew up in Ajax, the town that works. If you
grew up in
know that.
Ajax?
I grew up in Ajax.
I grew up in Oshawa.
Well, I was going to say, not far from Oshawa.
Yeah.
And I have this vivid memory of going down Main Street in Oshawa and spying like this seedy little strip club down beneath the street level, which was terrible and uninviting. I think it was called the Playpen. So, my first question was going to be, did you ever go to the Playpen? And if you did, why did you do that?
Are we rolling? Because if we're rolling, no, I did not.
Oh, okay.
I never. No, I didn't actually, because I think that place was like Midtown in Oshawa, and I was from the deep, dark south end of Oshawa, and they didn't allow us to go north of the 401. They didn't like the stank of the south end north of the 401.
Okay. Nice. And we were talking earlier off camera about the GM plant, which is, of course, when you think about Oshawa, you think about the GM plant,
Yeah.
and of course, it touched so many people in that town. What was it like growing up in a blue-collar town like Oshawa?
It was really interesting. I mean, for many years, I hated it, and then certainly I've come full circle to appreciate that everything that Oshawa did, but it's to have everybody in an entire, and we're not talking a small town. Like when I was there, it was probably 130,000 people. So it's a big-ish city, all focused on the same thing, on the same industry. And so when car sales were great, the city was great, but then when car sales weren't great, like everyone got laid off and everything. I think there's a really interesting lesson there for people and industries because there's nobody left that worked for General Motors. And Oshawa had to reinvent itself. And it certainly is doing a pretty good job of doing that, but it's taken some time. But yeah, it was like just everybody you knew either worked for GM or worked for like a satellite industry that served GM or was recently laid off by GM.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, and how did you make your way into advertising? How did you I know that you started in comedy?
No, I did start in comedy. Like most people in the room, probably, you don't go straight into advertising. You do a phys ed degree first. So that's what I did. I didn't I don't know. Nobody in my family went to university, and so I wanted to be a phys ed teacher. I wrestled and I wanted to coach wrestling and stuff, and I thought, well, how do I do that? And they're like, well, you got to go to university for that. I'm like, what's that? And so I went and did a phys ed degree, ended up working in the business school at Queens. And this is, for people in the room looking out, some of you will, Laura, you'll remember these days, but nobody else will, I think. Maybe Adam. This is pre-internet. So, I did not have an email address in university. And then when I came out, the internet had then started to grow. So I was in charge of doing the first website for the Queen's Business School with a company. And had hired this company and worked with them on it. And so because I did that, I was a tech guy. I was an innovator. And that company that I had hired to the website had just signed an agreement to be the web partner for an ad agency in Toronto. And that guy said, why don't you come work with us in Toronto? And so I was a web partner for, at the time, an agency called Sharp Blackmore.
Okay.
And I got into advertising, indirectly into advertising. The lesson through that was I was literally doing HTML, I was doing account management and everything. And there was this ad agency that was there serving clients. And the web business wasn't going so well, and I was like, I'm just gonna leave. I'm just gonna leave. And Bill Sharp, who was the chairman of Sharp Blackmore, one of the co-founders, called me in his office and goes, so, I hear you're leaving Affinity Edge. I'm like, yep. And he's like, you ever think of working in advertising? I'm like, nope. And he goes, you wanna work in advertising? I was like, what would I do? He's like, you could be an account guy. And I go, what's that? And he goes, this is what an account guy is. An account guy is making a list and checking it off. That's it. And the question is, are you smart enough to know what goes on the list? And are you ambitious enough to do it so that you can check it off? That's it in a nutshell. You can start Monday, we'll pay you whatever he was paying you. And I was like, okay. And I think the only reason he hired me because they thought I was funny. They didn't know whether I knew what I was doing. They just thought I was funny.
Wow, that's a great story. Amazing. And so you were after that you became a copywriter?
Yeah, I was an account guy. I was literally like an account director running the Intel business. I started to do comedy, and so I was doing both of those at the same time. I literally was doing a show in Edmonton at the Edmonton Fringe Festival, staying at in a hotel in Edmonton. My hotel caught on fire. I had to get plucked from the window by firefighters. Like literally me yelling down, going like, I'm gonna die. You gotta get up here and get me. You gotta get me. And the way the crazy part is the way the Fringe Festival pays you for shows is that they just give you cash. Like we sold it, so I had like $3,000 in like a satchel. And the firefighter comes to the window and he's like, we gotta go now. And I was like, I just gotta get my bag because there's $3,000. He's like, we gotta go. So I descended down the ladder and whatnot, and I returned to the agency and I walked into the president's office, Tom Blackmore, and I said, my life flashed before my eyes and account services didn't make the final cut. And I want my advertising or my stand-up life and my advertising life to be more closely aligned. I want to work in the creative department, and I'll take a pay cut to do it. And Tom Blackmore, can I swear in this?
Yeah, I think so.
Can I swear? Do you guys mind if I swear?
Yeah.
Only because I'm quoting somebody. So I said, I want to move in the creative department, I'll take a pay cut to do it. And Tom said, fuck off. And I said, what? And he goes, no. You're not taking a pay cut. Never take a pay cut. You have skills that you learned as an account guy that are going to serve you well as a creative guy. Don't take a pay cut. You're going to move into the creative department. You have 2 weeks to find your replacement. And that was, I think, one of the biggest that we talk about moments, right? Like we talk about a moment. That was the moment when Tom Blackmore and Bill Sharp trusted me that I could be a good writer in the creative department, and didn't let me take a pay cut when I had offered to do it. Wow. And so then I became a writer.
And so so you're working as a writer. I know that I want to get into your new book, Think, Do, Say, because I just spent the last 3 days listening to it. I think it's 4 hours long, so Ron has been in my ear for a lot of the last 4 days. As I listened to you on the book, it made me think that the book could have easily been called Just Be Yourself, because so much of it is relevant to brands finding a voice, and that's true of all brands and also personal brands as well. So I guess my first question that revolves around the book was, why do you think it's so hard for people to dig that up and find that, either for brands or for people in general? Why is it so hard for people to find what they believe in?
Well, I think it starts early. It starts really, really early. And we tell people before they, get to a kind of post-secondary education, we tell them to aspire to job titles opposed to values. So, we say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answers we respect are, I want to be a writer, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a politician, I want to be a social worker, those sorts of things. And nobody ever says, I want to be courageous, I want to be creative, I want to be trustworthy, I want to be compelling. Those are the things we don't teach kids, that they should aspire to values. We teach them that they should aspire to a job title. And in their mind, in all of our minds, we have the stock photo version of what that person is. It's like, oh, well, if I'm supposed to be an accountant, then this is what an accountant is. And so I'm going to forget everything that I stand for and that I believe in, and I'm just going to try and live up to do that. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think we know that what makes us real as human beings is our imperfections. It really is. I mean, because other people went to the same school, and other people did your same program, and the imperfections that we have are the things that that's what they buy. Like that's what's real about us. But it's the imperfect parts. And so that takes a really vulnerable person, a confident person, to go to that level of vulnerability, to go, I'm going to show you this side of me that maybe you wouldn't have seen before. And so I'm hesitant to do that. And because I think that you're gonna think less of me if I just show you a little bit of my imperfections. But to the person on the other side, if we don't show them the imperfections, they're like, well, if you're hiding the real you from me, what else are you hiding? Like, is it that I can't trust you? Or is it that you have a hidden agenda? So I think people will be way more successful if they just, embrace their imperfections. Now, those imperfections have to ladder up to either the organization, or if you're an entrepreneur, those imperfections have to ladder up to something that economically makes sense. Because people go, oh, that's amazing, I can embrace my imperfections because I'm a real jerk. Well, that doesn't work. You can be the jerk, and people may trust you because they know who you are, but there is no economic model where that person, does well. I don't think. Not in this day and age.
Well, I know one of the cases that you thread through the whole book is this company called REI in the U.S. REI is like the Mountain Equipment Co-op of the U.S. and as they state, their belief is that a life lived outdoors is a life worth living. And as you say and go through the steps of your book, to demonstrate that, they closed on Black Friday, the biggest sales day of the year. And do you think that brands and even people with personal brands, do they have to roll the dice big time for them to make an impact? Can you go halfway? Because that was a huge move for them.
That is a big move. I think that depending on what the belief is, the trouble that a lot of brands are facing now, and people, is that they're trying to game the system. So someone told them like, oh, you should have values, and you should believe in something more important. And so they go, oh, what's everyone talking about? The environment? Oh, yeah. We believe in the environment. We believe the planet, we need to save the planet. And so they just chase social issues that are current. because they think that's what everybody wants them to believe in, when in fact it strategically has absolutely nothing to do with the thing they sell. So why REI works is like, one, it's not a social issue. It wasn't an anti-consumerism message at all. Like it wasn't people are buying too much stuff or we believe that capitalism is evil or anything like that. It was just we believe a life lived outside is a life well lived. And then on that day of Black Friday, in their words, we'd rather be in the mountaintops than in the aisles, because it was such a horrendous experience for staff members on Black Friday. So if you actually believe in something that is strategically aligned with your product, then no, you actually don't have to roll the dice as much. Now, the other parts of it is kind of areas of commission versus omission. So if you don't pursue something because it's not a priority for you. You believe that a life lived outside is a life well lived, but you don't sponsor the eco parade because it just doesn't get on your radar, then that's not a big deal. The opposite of the era of commission is when you do something which contradicts your brand values. And that's, is called an integrity gap. An integrity gap is so when the actions of what you do contradict what you supposedly stand for. And that can be either paper cut, or that can be 60 Minutes is on the phone. And so you certainly have to go all in to ensure that you don't contradict what you believe in, creating integrity gaps. But areas of omission where you're like, well, it doesn't mean you have to pursue everything and anything in this space. Now, the line that we've been quoting for the last year is, you believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything, which was the headline in the Colin Kaepernick Nike ad. And I think that is true. I think, we just separated ways with a client a couple months ago, and that was because we were not aligned on values, and we gave money back. And that meant that conceivably there were staffing ramifications. And that is not a decision I take lightly or my team takes lightly. Mm-hmm. But that was where we believe in something, and if we don't behave in a way that reinforces that belief, then we're just paying lip service to it, and our beliefs are just out of convenience. They're not actual foundational beliefs. So I think when it comes to that, yeah, you're either all in or you're not.
I have to think with organizations, and I guess as organizations get bigger and bigger, it's so much more difficult to have everyone in there aligned. I mean, to have everyone believe in that such that they make their decisions that way. It's kind of like this tough thing to control. You have a relatively small company. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many employees you have.
We're about 20 people.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would think that you'd be able to maybe ride herd on that a little bit better. What about these larger, you work with large clients that seem to be pretty well in their alignment. How do they manage that?
It is, you're right, it's really, really tricky. And I think a lot of them, quite frankly, not our clients, or not just our clients, but most global organizations, they do a horrible job at it.
Yeah.
They do a horrible job at it. And it's because, and it starts with shareholders who are expecting quarterly returns and short-term vision over kind of long-term growth. It starts there, it goes to the CEO, and the CEO is like, how do I inspire and motivate my people? I'm just going to refer to our mission statement, which, by the way, is a full card of buzzword bingo with just a bunch of jargon. It doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's not going to inspire or inform them. But they're checking the box, right? Because someone said, let's lead with our mission statement. We need a mission statement, and let's lead with that. And so it's an entire organization of people checking boxes. And they're saying, no, but we wrote the mission statement. People, and you're like, that doesn't inspire anybody. You're not accomplishing what you think you're accomplishing. So they do a horrible job at it. So what do they need to do? One, I think they need to clearly articulate what they stand for. Two, I think they need to communicate what that means to the individual person in their role, or have that person communicate what that means to them. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my job and what I do on a daily basis? So, our viewers in Western Canada, they will know the Co-op. It's a really, really large grocery and petroleum company. Co-op. It's a co-op in Western Canada. And I'll go out and I deal with frontline employees, like people who literally pump gas. And we talk to them. I lead them in a session on like, what can you do to reinforce this promise of the tagline that says you're at home here? And I think those are the people who don't get to go to the Deerhurst. They don't get to go to strategic offsites. They don't get fancy trips, but they're the ones that can actually have the biggest difference on the experience that the end customer has in experiencing the belief that everybody else says the organization supposedly stands for. So I think you really need to inspire and inform your frontline staff to be the ones that actually deliver on it. And the line that always makes a room go silent when it's a senior leadership room is when I say, I shouldn't read your values. I should experience your values. Because writing them, that's really easy. But behaving in a way that reinforces those values, that's a lot more work. But that's where I get the experience from. That's where I build my trust from. That's where I build my kind of unique relationship with you, all that. And a lot of that comes from your frontline employees.
Yeah, you talk about trust, and I know one of the things that's also repeated in the book is people don't know where to look and where to trust, because we're in such a saturated market of messages where you can't go anywhere without being inundated by someone trying to pitch slap you or sell you something. And we also live in this self-publishing kind of world where everybody has the ability to publish what they want to say. And it made me think of TripAdvisor. And I can remember somebody saying to me, when you look at a TripAdvisor review, make sure you take note of where the person's from, because maybe somebody in Bowmanville who's critiquing the calamari at a restaurant, you might want to hear from somebody who's in New York City who's in a hotbed of culinary place, and who do you trust? What do you think about the self-publishing world? And also, when it comes to influencers, can anybody trust influencers if we know that they're getting paid to hawk something?
Yes, I think we can. I think we most certainly can. But I'll come back to that in a second. So I think a couple of things around that notion of trust is that yes, we're in this post-truth era, and brands go, no, but we're nice, we're really good people. Why don't they trust us? And we'll work with brands. Go look, if you look at the last decade, what has occurred outside of business? I mean, Lance Armstrong lied to our face for years. Bill Cosby went from America's dad to America's predator, overnight. CEO compensation went through the roof. Panama Papers did nothing. Occupy Wall Street did nothing. I mean, the Houston Astros, just last week, World Series finalists were accused of cheating for the past couple of years. The world's best Fortnite player was banned for life for cheating. And so, and apparently, I don't know what that is, but apparently that's
I can cheat at Fortnite.
It's important. So, just every which way, we've been shown that people actually don't have integrity, that people are gaming the system and working the system in their favor, and they're cheating and abandoning their values. And so, when a brand shows up and goes, trust us. No, I'm not. When a boss comes in and goes, we were just acquired by somebody, but nothing's going to change. You just got to trust us. No, they're not going to. And it has nothing to do with what you did. So that's the first thing on trust. On the reviews site, there are two angles to that. One is, you mentioned the right one. The most important one is that we amassed these sites of all these reviews, and now we're going I actually don't want that. I don't want to know what everybody likes, what their favorite calamari is. There's 10 people I trust when I discuss food. Right. There are 10 people I trust when I discuss music, 10 people I trust when I discuss comedy or theater. It's not everybody. So I've literally just invested in a company called Wavy. And this is not a pitch of Wavy or anything, but they're lovely people. But Wavy is designed so that people can access activities and adventures and experiences within a city that are recommended both through an AI engine as well as individual people that they follow. If you have a Spotify playlist kind of thing, I want to know what restaurant you go to because I trust you. And I don't have to know you, but I want to know what you think. So I think that's what we're going to get to in that trust recommendation engine, because even with this, right? Everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, the secret so the Amazon algorithm works in your favor. You need 100 customer reviews by the time the book launches." And I just went, no, I'm not doing it. And people are like, no, but your book will suffer because the algorithm. And I go, what about my soul? Because I think my soul suffers a little bit when I don't, when I consciously try and game the system so that I can make a bestseller list or that I can get up higher in the Amazon algorithm. I don't care. It's like, I really don't. I'd rather have my soul and my integrity. So that's the second part. Around influencers, I think, yes, that we most certainly, we have people in our lives who influence our decisions. If Martin Perlmutter from Speaker Spotlight, when he says, check out this band, I check out that band because he knows the music. And if somebody else says, check out this comedian, I'll check out that because I trust their opinion. They are influencers. They're just not getting compensated for it. Now, what happened in the influencer world was that we had a social media application, pick one, and the promise was to all the citizens, like, you can come here, you can hang out with your friends, and you can share stuff, and everything is amazing. And then all those eyeballs went from traditional media, and they went over here. And all the advertisers were over here, and the advertisers were going, well, where did all the people go? Right. And they went, they went over this new thing over here, and this is where you guys aren't. They're over there, because they don't want you. Because you did a horrible job over here, so they're over here. And so then brands would come in and they go, well, how do we get in there and invite ourselves to that party? And then the algorithm goes, okay, no, we should limit what brands can do in this space because it's wrecking the experience. So brands go, can we just go to people and go, here, you show our product. You go to the party, we're not allowed, but you go to the party and you show our product. It'll be cheaper for us. And the influencers who started in the space, whose audiences were built on the fact that they were unbiased, that they had no sales bias, that they weren't being compensated, that they were just giving authentic reviews, that they could say stuff that brands couldn't say and didn't say. That's what drove interest in those people. And then the second you flipped the switch and went, okay, now you can make cash, and I'll give you 10 grand if you just hold this bag up. It's that, and a lot of them, too many of them, went, yeah, sign me up. Right. And it was cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Now, and by the way, to the influencers out there, putting hashtag ad or hashtag sponsor doesn't get you out. Over time, we can still trust people who give authentic advice. And by the way, who give advice, who don't just give advice when there's a check that pays them to do it. And so people who build up our trust over time, and when they do get compensated, they need to make money at some point. But I think most of us can smell that when they're just doing it for the check and when they actually believe it.
Who do you think is doing a very good job at that?
Of influencers?
Yeah, who's doing it authentically where people can trust it and they know that they're not just holding up the can and doing that.
I think Amber Mack is and I've said, like, we should disclose, full disclosure, Amber is a friend of mine. But I also have, watch Amber from afar. And I think, like, she pumps out great, credible, non-stop. And she gets paid by brands to do stuff and to show up at events and to talk about their products. But she's also reviewing products on Marilyn Dennis. And she's, so there's a whole world. And I'm so happy that she can make that entire system work. And I trust her opinion on a lot of that stuff.
How is it that we had this experience not long ago where we had a client who was looking to connect with an influencer, and I think there was a cost thrown out, and it seems so arbitrary. It's hard to even know how the valuation works in that world.
Yeah.
What's your experience been with that?
And we do programs for clients, right? And so again, I'm not saying there are some influencers that work really, really well. What you need to do is, if you're choosing the influencer because they've got 30,000 followers or 100,000 followers, 4 million, whatever, it's a really simple calculation. Mm-hmm. It's just, what's the ROI on that? And apply the same model that you apply to the Globe and Mail or a pre-roll YouTube video. Right. Just do the math. What is it, and choose a number and make it better. But just choose a number. Do you want engagement level? Do you want to feel like, what is it? What do you want? So if you're just buying their eyeballs and then you're just treat them like a full-on media program, that is a really, really easy calculation to do. And I think a lot of times they come out on top. I think they come out as a really efficient use of advertising dollars. If it's not that though, and you actually want a partnership out of it, and you want somebody who is aligned with your values and somebody who is aligned with your personality and who fundamentally believes in your product, what's that worth? No clue, no idea. And I'd love to find the person who has the calculation. People will tell you they've got the calculation. I don't think there's so many soft metrics in there that I don't think you can ever calculate it.
Do you have clients that only do that? Is it always part of a mix, or do you have clients that want to do that solely?
Some come to us and say, we just want an influencer program. Do you know any?
Right.
They're just looking for a pipe to the people, right? It's like, oh, you don't know Gary? Yeah, we can introduce you to Gary. Gary's only $500, Yeah. But it's not. There's no secret sauce. You can find these people. They're great. Swish Goswami runs a company called True Fan, where brands can go in and go like, let's find out who your true fans are, and you can self-identify who your great influencers already are. My final point on this, I think, not the shutdown question, but my final thought on it was like, I think where brands really need to go is you can do that for influencers with their media, part of your media plan. You can have a couple of brand ambassadors who are aligned with you. But I think brands need to focus inward and say, who are our internal influencers? If I'm a big retailer and I've got Stephanie working in the camera department or in the smartphone department, and Stephanie really knows her stuff, and we can shoot Stephanie from the sales floor when the new device comes in, doing a little review, wearing the shirt of the retailer, then that has a lot of credibility for me. And I think brands can make their own stars within their organization, and they can create their own influencers, and that's way more credible. I think you just have to do it in a way that there is some sort of compensation for those people. It changes job descriptions, but I think internal influencers are going to be way more powerful in the next 2 to 3 years.
So and the suggestion there is that employees or brand or representatives of the company get into self-publishing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that was your final point on the self-publishing piece.
Well, you managed to bring it around. I think I asked the question improperly, but it's still something that I wanted to ask you is so if you're asking everyone or at least representatives of the company to get out and self-publish, my question is we tend to be impatient. I mean, everybody is, and we want results now. But we know that can take a long time to do, and an incredible amount of focus and time and man hours. So, what's been in your experience with maybe more traditional companies who kind of look at you and gonna go, really? Self-publishing, I get it. I understand, and I see companies who do it well. I can see its value, but geez, how long is that going to take, Ron?
Yeah, there's around the self-publishing as an individual, because I think your earlier question was like, is that, well, maybe what I took from it was like, there's a lot of crap. Like it creates a lot of crap, right?
Oh, and I think that is true too. I always use the example of American Idol where, someone comes out and performs terribly and no one in their life loves them enough to tell them that they're terrible.
Yeah.
And they make it all the way down, to that part of the show where they sing horribly in front of professionals. and there's that double-edged sword of like, people will say, just stick with your dream and don't ever give up, because you see these huge stars that stuck with it and became huge, but and then Simon Cowell or whoever is standing there kind of going, it's never going to happen for you.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I understand both, because I've been on both sides of it. Mm-hmm. You know what? Like, starting out, I had some rough comedy nights. And so I think the self-publishing model, be it a book or a blog or music or whatever, there's two things with that. One is that people put too much emphasis on the tools. And like, hey, just because you have access to Microsoft Word doesn't mean you can write a best-selling book.
Right.
And whereas now everyone's like, oh, you can make a camera because the editing is, or you can make a video because the editing is so easy. Like, no, but you still need an eye of what makes a good cut. Just because the actual action of editing is easier now, that doesn't mean that you can just automatically do great work. So it's not about the tools at all. I had Jake Gold on a podcast. Jake was the music manager of the Tragically Hip. He's a great guy. And we were talking about this in music. And because what's happened, because the tools are so easy and the marketing is so much more accessible, that what a lot of people go is like, oh, I'll just crank on the book or on the track, and then I'm gonna invest all my time in gaining followers and posting to Instagram and blah, blah, like doing the marketing of it. And it's like, no, but you're forgetting that, you know, and the line that Jake and I shared was, a crappy band on 8-track is still a crappy band on Spotify. And does no one go, no, but what about the craft? Like, what about the book or the track or the piece? Like, that still has to be great. And I love that it's more accessible to people to pursue it than there ever has been. But man, we can't assume that it's going to be gold. And the responsibility is us on people, because you said no one had the guts to tell them they sucked.
Right.
And so the two parts to that statement is, one, if you suck, get better. You just need to get better. And we're jumping the gun too far, too quickly to go, no, but I got to market it and I got to get on Instagram and get followers and stuff. You're like, no, but you suck right now. Just get better. Just go to a comedy club and bomb for 3 months. And I'm telling you, you will feel the vibe in the room where you will pick up the subtleties of what the crowd is liking and not. And, sorry. Are we okay? We're all right, okay. So we need to suck more. We just really knew. We need to suck more. And at the same time, we need to suck with a clear goal for getting better, and we can't drink our own Kool-Aid. Because any single person in this room could go out to a stage tonight and deliver a talk, and somebody somewhere would tweet out that we, quote unquote, slayed it. And was that what the kids say? We slayed it, right? And I think you have to, you're never that good. You're never that good as what the Twitter comments say you are. You're just not. You can't drink your own Kool-Aid. I was at the point where I was doing, this year I'll do 72 keynotes, which is a lot. 2 years ago, I was about doing 55. And I went to my good friends, Michael and Amy Port, and I said, there's just something not working. And 55 is a lot of keynotes. So I'm slaying it on stage. But it just doesn't feel like it's quite there yet. And it doesn't meet my high expectations. And I think I'm getting by in charm and humor. I want your help. And we tour. So I was at, a place that a lot of speakers would be like, that's the great place to get to. I got there and said, it's not good enough. We're going to tear this whole thing down. And we built it back up from scratch. And it's only now getting to the point where like, now I'm feeling like, some of the reviews are justified. But there was a long time where I was like, favoriting the tweets and liking the tweets and going, look what they said. When in my heart, I knew it wasn't quite there. So we can't drink our own Kool-Aid.
There's a great line in the book, and I promise I'll try not to butcher it here, but I think you say something like, when your experience with the people that you work with matches their perception of you, something like that.
Yeah, when the experience matches perception.
I think so many of us struggle a little bit with that, and even what you're talking about now, where you do your best to project something out there, but then there's this little bit of your conscience is kind of going, well, it's not quite the truth. And if you could give anybody here some advice on trying to get to that or get closer to that, what would you say to them? I mean, I do think about it as a conscious. There's this, like you were saying, there's this something, a little voice in your head kind of going, it's not quite as authentic as I want it to be. I don't know if that's the word.
Yeah, I think so. Excuse me, there's a great line, as you probably done in the book, I wrote There's a bunch of quotes in the book, but I hate when people just default to quoting other people. So I just made them all up, and and like one of the quotes is like Confucius saying, "It's really difficult to have a political discussion on Facebook." WTF, Confucius. And someone's like, "Did Confucius really say that?" No. The host of This Is American Life on NPR. Anybody know his name? It's killing me that I can't remember his name.
Sorry.
He's a great radio host. He's a very talented guy. Ira Glass. And Ira Glass painted this picture for me that I got it when he was like, look, like when you're starting out, you like stuff. Like if you're in music, you love great music. And you have a sensibility for what that is. And then you start creating stuff and you're like, this isn't that. But you can never lose sight of that. You can never lose your taste because it's your taste, and I'm totally paraphrasing him, but it's your taste that's going to improve your own work. And if you just keep your own taste intact, you will find a way to get your work to that level that you're proud of. And so I think we have to just, do that. In terms of that, our perception matching the reality is authenticity. The line in the book is, it's being comfortable with your imperfections. But I think it's just this absolute honesty with yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you sucked at something or something bombed, you need to own that and not double down on it. But you're like, yeah, that wasn't my finest moment. Or I'm really not great at this skill set. And coming to terms with ourselves and what we're good at and what we're not good at. And how do we backfill the stuff we're not good at? And how do we, focus on the stuff we're really good at? So when I started the agency, I was a former creative director. I'd never run a business. I didn't know anything about running a business. Business always came to me and my folks on my team, right? Didn't know anything. Cocky creative director, I'm gonna start my own agency and clients will flock to, right? Of course that never happens. And so we won a piece of business, and speaking was funding the agency in the beginning. I had to hire some people, and then there's no speaking in the summertime. And then I bought a house, and then I got married, went on a honeymoon. So we hit near the end of August. Accountant came to me and she goes, payroll is on Thursday. Mm-hmm. It's like there's no money in the account to pay people. Right. And I said, we just billed $100,000. She's like, yeah, but we're not getting that for like 90 days. And I said, oh, well, what are we gonna do? And she's like, this is your company. You're supposed to tell me what we're supposed to do. And so I said, oh, is this cash flow? She's like, mm-hmm, that's the term that the smart people use, cash flow. So in the most humbling moment of my life, two humbling moments. One, employee number one, Bridget Towler, who's a phenomenal human being, came to me and said, I heard you talking to Lee, and if you need to not pay me for a couple of months, I've got some money saved, and you don't need to pay me. And I thought, man, like that is loyalty that goes beyond anything that I've ever heard of before. And I wouldn't accept that offer because I told her, you don't have equity. If you don't have equity, you get a check. That's the deal. You get a check every 2 weeks. But it blew me away, and I felt horrible that I had recruited her and sold her to come and join, and then 1 year into it, I can't even pay her. So I went to the client and I said, I need you to courier me that check. And I know we just won this account. I need you to courier me the check. But here's my deal. If you do it, I will give up equity in this agency to bring in somebody who can actually manage it on a day-to-day basis, who actually has some sense of finance, and this will never happen again. If it does happen again, you fire me. But I need you to do that so I can pay my people. And that client, Vikram Verghese and JF Dairy from AB World Foods, sent the check, and they're still a client today. And that, I'm not sitting here if they don't courier that check, I tell you, I'm not. And there's not 20 people back at the office because it would have been shut down in a moment's notice.
Is this not reflective of, was it your grandfather? You tell the story?
Yeah. Great memory. My grandfather was a cobbler. He moved here from Italy when he was like 14, I think, and he repaired shoes. And he worked as a teenager in this cobbler shop for somebody else. And the guy's like, "You're not going to have a job in a month or two because I have to sell the business." And I don't know. It's probably not going to be. You're not going to have a job. And my grandfather was like, "What are you talking about? I have no education. I moved here from barely speak English." And so my grandfather said, "Okay, what do you want for the business?" And whatever the amount was. And my grandfather went to the bank and said, "I don't have the money. I need you to loan me the money. If you loan me the money, I promise you two things. One, I will work 7 days a week until I pay that loan off. Two, I will always be your customer for life. I will be loyal to you." And back in those days, early 1900s kind of thing, this was like a handshake deal. And and then the people, he needed leather and glue and tacks and all the supplies. And he went to those people and said, "If you advance me the materials that I need, you will always be my materials supplier." He had that business for, I think it was close to 60 years, the same bank. And when he died at 99, and when he left the business, he had the same supplier. And I think that says a heck of a lot about loyalty to people. The line in the book is, who you do it with is more important than who you do it for.
Right. It's a great story, and you talk about the power stories. This is an aside from me. At one point in the book, you say, stories are great unless you go all memento on it.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming is a reference to the movie.
To the movie, yeah.
And so, I've seen the movie, but
did I spell it wrong? Because I
don't know. I heard that, and I was like, I'm not sure what he means by that.
Well, in Memento, it's like the order is all messed up, right? And you're always like, is he in the current? Is he in the present tense? And so it gets really cumbersome. And I think brands can get really. They can overthink the storytelling. Here's what every brand story is. It's not rocket science. This is what we believe, and this is what we do about it. That's it. That should be every brand story. And and it's like, this is what we believe, so this is the thing we make. Like, that's it. And deliver it in an authentic voice. And then there's a million different ways that you can do that, just that alone. And there's multiple layers of creativity that you can add. But that is the story. This is what we believe, and this is what we do to reinforce that belief. And I think we can overthink it by getting all memento of time shifting and
right.
What are the better advice that we have to do it and not go all Pulp Fiction on it?
Well, it was good. I was probably, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, so I probably just needed it explained that if you're going to tell a story, you have to be clear and concise and consistent with it.
Yeah.
And so I know that's probably.
I hope I'm referencing the right movie.
No, you are. I've thrown you off. I'm throwing the whole thing off.
But so we talked about REI earlier. This is what's really funny. So I had been using REI in speeches. I literally show the video, and then I repeat, "This is what he said," okay? So the actual script of the video is, "We believe a life lived outside is a life well lived." That's what he says. And I've seen it 4 million times, and then I would repeat it. But I didn't even realize when I repeated it, I was repeating the wrong line. And what I would say was, "We believe a life lived outside is a life worth living." And that's what I wrote in the book. And then I was at a gig, and this friend, Vic Heward, who was in the audience, and he goes, "You said, it's not what he says." I'm like, "What are you talking about? It's what he says." He's like, "It's not what he says." And I said, "I've seen the video 8 million times. I wrote about it in the book." Nope, it's totally wrong in the book.
Trick of the mind. So listen, we have students here, and we have some people who are probably interested in building personal brands. And so I want to ask you your advice on this. I think the great thing about your book, and when I thought about tonight, and I thought about who is going to be here, and knowing that some people are knee-deep in a career and other people are just starting out, and how are we going to tie that all together?
Yeah.
So I have to thank you, because the book is very relevant to everyone when you break it all down. So I guess if you could give it's a two-part question. So what advice would you have for someone who wants to be the most authentic version of themselves but doesn't know where to look and who to trust? And the second part is, I think that everybody is definitely afraid of being wrong about that. And oftentimes I'll have people on this podcast, and I'll say, like, there might be a few people who are like, I knew what I wanted to be from the get-go. Since I was, yay high, I wanted to be X. And I think they're great people, and I would I sometimes am jealous. I wish I was that person. Most of us need a little tap on the shoulder and someone to validate it. And then I don't know if you've noticed, but you're pretty good at public speaking. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you go, man, maybe I should look into that. And then you go off and do it. So you need that little bit of validation. So I've made it very long-winded, but what advice would you give for someone to look to find that, and who to look to and who to trust? And then how do you know that you're close to truly believing in what your core beliefs are, I guess?
The first one is that you do need those people in your lives who call you on your BS. Because we've all got it, and we all come to the table with an ego of we drink our own Kool-Aid, and we need the people in our lives who go, no, you don't. People who keep us grounded, people who can be really, really honest with us, and we have to protect and celebrate those relationships. And sometimes we need to really listen to, and that sounds really lame, but we need to really listen to people. I think when we go and ask for advice, often we're just looking for confirmation of the thing that we really want. We actually don't want the truth. We think something, and we keep asking people until we find someone that tells us what we want to hear. And there are people, who I know I can just listen to because they're probably bang on with their assessment. My friend Bruce Sallery, we talked about him earlier. Bruce is on City Line and Breakfast Television, and he has a show called Moolala. And when I was launching the book, I was like, I don't want to promote the book. Like, I don't know, it's lame. And it's not lame, but I don't want to be that guy. I was too concerned with pitch slapping people. And Bruce just out of the blue sent me a text that said, I'd like to offer another opinion. The book is not about you. It's not. You wrote it, but it's not about you. It is about helping people grow their careers and helping businesses grow. So get out of the way. And the book is that advice at scale. Promote it. Because if you don't, you're not going to help other people. So it's not about you. And he just did that. I didn't ask. And he just did it. And that's the type of friend and the type of person that you need in your life. And the type of people you listen to. In speaking, there's a rule that Michael Port and Amy Port use, which is you're either a performer or a critic. You can't be both. And so often it's the people who want to come and go, you know what you should do, you know what you should do. And we need to take that advice as being somebody who is just maybe uncomfortable in their own performance, and they're now projecting onto you. And so it really is knowing about who to listen to and who not to listen to. What was the second part?
The second question was, how do you feel inside that you truly know that you're doing the right thing? You had mentioned that, after getting a fair amount of success in speaking, that you had to recalibrate the whole thing after a while. So when do you feel, how do you not know that maybe in 6 months from now you might look at your current program and do the same thing again? And does that matter?
No, it most certainly does. And so what I've now incorporate is something that I think everyone should incorporate, is I do, in every single speech, there's something called the new two. And the new two is 2 minutes that I've never done before. Never been before a crowd. And it's a thought, it's a random thing, or it's something that happened in the news. Oh, McDonald's CEO got fired for having an inappropriate relationship. I'm gonna work that in. I'm gonna play with it on stage. And I'm gonna realize in the moment whether there's anything there or not. And if there's not, it gets thrown away, and I move on to the next thing and the next speech. If there is something there, I know it. I feel it. I can tell the silence in a room of them nodding. It is a feeling that you get of like there's something here, and I'm more curious about where that goes. And so I think that looking at my career as a whole, I think the thing that's been really beneficial is just a sense of curiosity. Like I don't know what in now 20 years ago, that guy back then who said, I'm gonna try stand-up comedy. Who does that? Like there's no, I didn't say I wanted a career in stand-up comedy. No, I'm gonna do this because I'm really curious. And I was curious about the method to the madness. And I wanted to do it so that I could experience it. And then once I did it, then it became, how do I make it better? How do I make it better? How do I make it better? Sure. I don't know if that answered your question.
I think it does. Yeah.
We'll fix it in editing. Make sure we make that I answer the question.
Yeah. I mean, that underlying thing of I just think everybody's just a little bit afraid of making mistakes. Everybody kind of wants to be perfect when it comes to this, and we'll segue into maybe some of the Q&A for some of the students though. But I think when you're first starting out, you just want to be so good that you're afraid of screwing up.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think the line to remember for that is the line that I use in comedy is, because I'll now work at Heroic Public Speaking in New Jersey and working with speakers on integrating humor. And I always tell them, like, pan for silver, work for gold. That you think that a great bit just presents itself, and you're like, oh, we caught one, Just as in advertising, you think like an amazing campaign, you just spit it out, or a great line, or a great idea, and it just happens, and you're like, it was the 15th one. No, you gotta pan for silver. You gotta go, well, maybe there's something kind of interesting about that. How do we make it better? And that's where you work for gold. And you work for gold in your career, you work for gold in your advertising, you work for gold in your speeches, but it's work.
That's great advice. I was gonna say, if we want to, we can move to some questions and answers. Mm-hmm. If anybody has any, I know I have my list of questions if no one wants to start, but is there anybody out there that would like to ask Ron a question or two?
Right there, you have one. Yes, what's your question? Yeah.
I kind of do have a question.
It's like an art auction. She tugged her earlobe, you're like, sold, the Monet.
Actually, I do, yes. And this could also be helpful to students. I feel that when you start in the industry, it's good to have a good mentor. I feel like that could make or break your career. And I feel like you kind of were lucky enough to have these great opportunities present themselves to you because they saw something in you. And they believed in you, and they kind of like saw you in this good light. But what advice do you have if you don't have that? Like if you don't have a good creative director mentoring you, or like it's more of a struggle in that sense, trying to find your creative voice. I feel like just being a copywriter and art director, it's such a hard job, and there's so much that you can learn from the talented people around you. Do you have any advice, like, if you don't have that off the bat? Like, I feel like it can make or break a career. You know what I mean?
I think that, one, that people expect too much from their mentors. And especially when the mentor has a title, like creative director. It's like, but my creative director didn't ever inspire me. They don't need to. Maybe the good ones do. And even the good ones, they don't inspire everybody. That it's about connection. And so what you don't get at work, you need to get elsewhere. And this is not taking anything away from the mentors, the important people who I got to work with over the years. But I think that Steve Martin who I've never met in my life, a renowned comedian and banjo player, was as much a mentor to me as anybody else. Never met the man, but I looked at his career from afar and went, how does this guy go from being the hottest comedy writer in Hollywood in the 1960s, ditches it, starts touring as a stand-up, never had done stand-up before, rewrites the rules of what a stand-up comedian is and how they look and how they act and everything else, gets to a point in 1981 selling out stadiums, sees an empty block of seats, quits, boom, does not do stand-up again for 35 years. Because he then starts writing screenplays and novels. And that to me was really inspiring. So I don't think your mentors have to come at work. And I've had it when situations where, and I'm not actively involved in the creative anymore, our creative director Lionel Wong is, but when junior creative saying like, I just don't get the creative opportunities here. And when I look back at the stuff that I really, really, like the work that I really loved, both enjoyed doing, and that I thought the work was phenomenal, those weren't creative opportunities at all that one would call a creative opportunity. Those were opportunities that we just kept digging. We're really curious about it through the partners that I had. And so I think you need to take, and I'm not saying you need to take more responsibility. I think all of us need to take more responsibility for our careers.
So like make your own opportunity.
Make your own opportunities. I have a friend who's a TV writer, and people would say to him, I want to work in TV. I want to be a TV writer. And he'd go, what have you written? And they go, no, I want to do it. And like, what? We just talked earlier about how it's never been cheaper to write a script. So yeah, create your own opportunities and look wherever you can for mentors. But I was very lucky.
No, but I mean, yeah, like I feel like it's good to learn from those around you, but also you had that ambition to pick up wherever you found inspiration.
Yep. I think within the halls of agencies, what's really interesting is those two gentlemen that I talked about who mentored me were both account guys. They weren't creative directors. Now, Mark Giacomelli, Tony Miller, two creative directors I've worked with who were incredibly inspiring to me in completely different ways. But it's not always in the creative department that creative people are going to find inspiration.
Thank you.
How have the skills that you've gained from doing stand-up comedy helped to increase your ability with copywriting? And as a creative director and copywriter, how would you say you could implant those skills into another industry, or somebody could use those skills to implant into another industry to make their business grow?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a couple of things about stand-up that I think really that I've benefited from. The first one is the understanding that that's probably the biggest leap I'll ever take in my life. Having zero, so what I didn't mention is my very first stand-up show, I went to my friend Steve Patterson, who's now the host of CBC's The Debaters. Went to Steve and said, I want to do stand-up, what do I do? And he went, oh, you go to Yuck Yucks and you go to an open mic night on a Monday night, you do 5 minutes. I went, okay. So I went, I'm just gonna go check it out. I'm not gonna do it, I'm just gonna check out the scene. And I went down and I was like, this is horrible. This is not inspiring anymore. I'm not doing this. No, I've never done it. I already know I'm better than everybody on the stage. Not doing this. This is a freak show. So I went back, I'm like, what else do I need to do? And he's like, well, then you can just find a producer who's producing a live show and see if you convince them to let you on the show, even though you've never ever done it before. Maybe they'll give you 5 minutes. In my brain, I immediately went, why don't I just make myself the producer? How hard can that be? I'll just produce my own show. I make myself the headliner. So my very first night of stand-up comedy ever, I did a 45-minute headlining set. And that's chutzpah. And I'm not even Jewish, and that's chutzpah, right? So doing that act alone that's the entrepreneur in me going, I'm not following the rules. I just want to do the thing I want to do. I'll just figure out how to do it on my own. So that was really, really important. Just like when I started the agency, the thing you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to your existing clients and go, hey, I'm doing my own thing now. Why don't you come over here with me? I did the opposite, where I promised myself I would not go to any clients I'd worked with before. Didn't want to do that. It was a complete fresh. So that's one thing. The second thing is the obvious presentation aspect of it. So walking out onto a stage of a group of people going, better make me laugh. Like I paid my $6 at the door and this beer cost me $12. This better be good. So you gotta make a connection immediately. And you begin, once you know how to do that and read a room and work a room and all those skills, when you go to present a campaign in a boardroom with 6 people who want you to succeed because their brand is on the line, that's really easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's certainly, they're not throwing beers at your head, put it that way. And then the third part where I really learned is like, what is stand-up? Stand-up is advertising. It really is. Because stand-up, good stand-up is based on an insight. George Carlin said, my job as a comedian is to simply remind you of the things you forgot to laugh at the first time. And that's all stand-up. Stand-up doesn't create anything. It just goes, remember that thing? And you go, oh my God, it's funny because it's true, right? I thought the same thing. That is advertising. When viewers at home go, when I get my clothes dirty, I feel that way too. It is all based on insight. What makes stand-up really powerful is when you can combine the insight with where you take it. So if you go, what's the deal with the thing on the airplane? That's the insight. And then you go exaggerate, different perspective, impersonation, blah, 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 right? You build on it and you add layers of creativity. That's where the funny is. In advertising, it's the opposite, where you're like, here's some funny, here's some interesting art direction, here's some witty lines, and here's the insight that we want you to walk away with. It's the exact same process, just written it a little bit differently. Steve and I talked about this earlier. Like, I think people assume that I wrote a bunch of funny stuff, that I was the go-to, and I looking back on my body of work in advertising, and there wasn't actually a ton of really funny stuff. Like I wasn't exclusively funny, but it is the exact same process, same emotional journey that audiences go on. Does that answer? Yeah.
What keeps you motivated, and how do you redirect that energy once you find something that's motivating you?
I think my biggest downfall is that is focus. My biggest weakness is focus. I was talking with my friend Mitch Joel the other day, and he's like, "I love how you have a project approach to everything." I'm like, "Yeah, it's because I got bored. Like I got bored, and I got to move on." And staying motivated is knowing when I need to walk away from something. So we joke at the agency that I've got 800 plates spinning. And like this one, and I just go, I'm going to keep that going, that one, that one, that one, that one. At some point, you got to go, that one's going to crash. That's falling to the floor. I know it's going to fall to the floor. But this one, I don't know. There's something about this one that I want to see through. And it's being motivated to just do it in a different way. I think that's what it is. I don't know. I guess I just don't like getting comfortable. And I think all of us get set in our ways and comfortable, and we're like, well, I did that last while, I'll just do that thing again. And that works, but then you wake up one day and your skill set no longer, you've gone past the expiration date on your skill set because you didn't continue to push the envelope and stay curious. And I think it's like just always chasing the next thing. Does that help? Yeah.
I can ask a last question.
Sure.
So you have a company, you do some hiring, I'm assuming. I was going to say, you're going to have some people here who are going to be on an interview at some point. How do you give good interview?
Oh, well, I mean, be yourself is such a lame go-to answer, but it's the right one. think people feel like they need to, it's like a blind date. And if you try and be something that you're not on the blind date, you may get to the second date, but you're not getting the third once they discover who you really are. And more hiring decisions are based on culture and your talent. Yes, your talent should speak for itself, but you're not the only person who can write a headline campaign, or you're not the only person whose book has got an app in it. That's that is a spec app in it. The culture piece is so important, and that comes when you are you're yourself. The way I look at it is like I was single till I was 43, so I went on a lot of blind dates in my 30s. And if you go on a blind date and you're like, oh, I'm going on a blind date with an investment banker, and so I'm going to wear this shirt because I want that person to think I'm like them, right? And then the next night you have a different blind date with somebody who's like a complete tree hugger. And you're like, well, I can't wear that thing that I wore for the investment banker, but in my wardrobe, I got this other thing. This is more appropriate, right? I'm gonna wear that. And both of those things are both in your wardrobe. And so that both of those things are authentically you as a person. So you don't need, I think when we say be yourself, we think it's this like tightly defined thing. No, we have a range of personalities. We can dial up and dial down certain aspects of our personality. But if you go out and buy a new shirt so that you look like somebody that you're not, even you're uncomfortable in it. The shirt is new, it hasn't been worked in, doesn't have the folds in the right place, and you don't feel right, and you don't look right, and it's too stiff, and people they just smell that a mile away. So yeah, I mean, I think you really have to be yourself. The second part is to do your homework. People who come in and go, so what brands do you have? I'm like, they're all on our website. Really? I shouldn't be telling you that. I want somebody who's a little bit curious about the place. Otherwise, then I know you're probably meeting 400 different agencies and 400 different people, and I'm not that special in your world. The third part is to follow up, and to follow up in an interesting and authentic way. And then the fourth part is don't follow up after you followed up. Right? It's like, and speakers are just as guilty as this. We get put on holds, like, hey, I'm on a hold for this date. And a bureau, not the one I'm with, but another bureau said, no bureau in the history of the world ever got a call from a speaker when the speaker said, I'm just curious about the date that I'm on hold for. No bureau ever said, oh, we didn't tell you, you got it. I'm so sorry. We meant to call you. Yeah, it's yours, right? So, you follow up in a great way, and I mean, maybe a little bit later, but just don't hound somebody. Right. I think those four things work. Can I give one more other piece of advice?
Absolutely.
I think, when you look at your career, I've always asked myself four things, and I need all four things at any one time in whatever job I'm in before I realize I need to make a change. The four things are, I need to be learning something new. By that, the second thing is I need to be challenged. Like I need the thrill of overcoming a challenge and solving something. The third thing I need to be compensated, and I don't mean I need to make a lot of money. It means I need, in the grand scheme of things, to be fairly compensated by the system. And then the fourth thing is I need to be having fun. Like I really do. I just need to be having fun with it and enjoy the people that I'm with. And if any one of those four things have ever been out of whack, it's like, check please, I'm gonna go. And I just stepped down as CEO 2 weeks ago because there were a couple of things there that were out of whack, and it was not because of the team, but it was because of my take on my job. And I thought, for me and for the business, I need to step down. And my say isn't lining up with my think and my do, because I'm not running this company. Our president, Robin Whalen, is. And so I said, you should be CEO, not me. And she's like, what are you going to be? I'm like, founder. And the biggest hurdle to making that decision was the ego. Parking my ego, because CEO sounds wicked. Nobody knows what a founder does.
Well, listen, I want to say thanks for coming tonight and sharing your insights. I think everyone has gleaned something from it tonight. I know I certainly have, so thank you so much. We have 10 signed copies of this fantastic book. And I know when you guys came in, I think you were handed a ticket. So before you leave, make sure you check in and see if you've won one of these books. And if you haven't, well, for heaven's sakes, go out and just spend the money and buy it. Because it's pretty good. Even the audio version is very good, too. I talked to you about maybe voiceover work because you sound very, I felt a little Anthony Bourdain-ish coming
nice.
through there. And it was,
Yeah.
it was great. So for 4 hours to do that, that took some guts.
It's
So-
a relief to not hear that it was Jeremy Piven for the 500th time. Like,
Could have been so worse. So thank you very
Thanks for
much.
having me.
And thank you guys for being here. And thanks for the NAC team for pulling this all together and getting the pizza and all that kind of stuff. It's been great. So
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
What do you want to do now?
Pizza. Yeah. And beer. Let's just drink a beer or something.
Yeah. This episode has been brought to you by the National Advertising Challenge, North America's only brief-based challenge that sends winners to Cannes, France.